Ready, set, go!
Gage Investigative, the best true crime channel out there.
I'm a true crime channel.
12 Gauge Investigators is the best.
12 Gauge Investigators the best.
12 Gauge Investigators, he's the best.
Prince George's County 911 Center. What is the location of the emergency?
Across 4709 40th Avenue.
You say
It's a fire, and it's catching fast.
4709?
Yeah, 4709.
Okay, what city is that, ma'am?
Hyattsville, sorry.
And what's your name?
We take on the darkness, stare down deceit. Murder in the headlines, justice in the beat. From cold case whispers to killers in disguise, we rip off the mask, expose all the lies. Facts like bullets reload and deliver. Truth cuts deep like a blade in a river. Corruption shakes when the mic goes live. We dig where others won't survive. Games rolling through the smoke. Truth hits hard, no time for a joke. Deceit, murder, we name every name. No restraint, no shame, just flat.
12 Gauge Investigator is the best.
When you're in Foley, come get your hair cut where 12 gets his at Nick's Barbershop. 12 Gauge is the best. We love you.
12 Gauge Investigative is the best.
My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome.
Ready, set, go!
Gage Investigative, the
Man, I'm all the way off of it tonight. All right. How's everybody doing? My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. As you heard people saying, 12 Gauge is the best. You know, I hope that don't rub people the wrong way. As you know, I shouldn't even have to be saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. What am I supposed to say about myself? 12 Gauge is the worst. 12 Gauge is mediocre. 12 Gauge is so-so. Of course I'm going to say I'm the best. Because that's how I feel about certain things on my channel. Is 12 Gauge is the best, you know? Whether other people feel that way or not, that's their prerogative, you know what I'm saying? That's their prerogative. I'm trying to figure out how to open these in a window like I did today on my other computer. I was able to open these in another window. And of course, it won't let me do it in here for some damn reason. I don't know what the hell is up. What the difference between this one and the other computer is. So, how much we going to add to BK's GoFundMe? Yeah, I saw that. Thank you for that message. You know, I don't know how much I'm going to donate. Maybe the people that have all the monetization and all that stuff can donate it. You know what I mean? You know, whoever wants to donate, they're more than free to donate, of course. I don't think I'll donate a damn dime to that. Why don't all the pro burgers or those individuals who protest his innocence, why don't they donate? How do you switch the reader? Like, I don't want it to be this big ass reader. I want it to be like a Google Chrome. I'm trying to figure out how to do that so that you can see the documents as well. Because honestly, I don't care about Koberger at this point. I just want to read some of this stuff because I was reading some stuff earlier and I was like, this is pretty damn interesting. Not interesting in the regard that, there's something nefarious that I'm looking for, but interesting in the part where it is discussing certain things. And that's what makes it so interesting to me. Yeah, I agree with you, Texas. I totally agree with you 100%. Let me see. Where do you usually go to change how your stuff is read and what type of windows are opened? Where do you do that at? I'm trying to see. I don't know. It's going to drive me crazy. Do y'all know where I need to go to change the freaking what opens up certain things? Because I don't want it to be I don't want it to be that freaking thing that it's on there. Open cert. Okay. I don't want that. I'll find it. But once again, I'm glad everybody's here tonight. And while I'm doing this, I'm sure people are going to meander in. Because, it's always a good draw. 12 gauge in your display. In your Google settings and display. Hold on a second. Let me go look. Okay, so wow, that totally fucked it up. Hold on a second. That made it go sideways. I don't know if I like that. Yeah, I flipped it all the way around. I don't know where it's at. I have it. I have it right here. Let's see if maybe this one will do it. Because I was reading about some of the stuff that people were talking about the other night when we were talking about, the tips that were coming in and stuff like that. Extract, view. Okay, share, home, properties. This drives me crazy because when I opened it earlier, for the first time, it gave me the option of what I wanted to use. Maybe I need to delete these and then download them again. I'm so sorry, guys. I should have done this before I went live, but it was getting later and later. And I thought I needed to get on here. Otherwise, people were going to go to bed. And there it is. Open with more option. Oh, I think your boy found it. Windows Media Player, WordPad. paint. Let's go with Internet Explorer. Maybe that'll work. Let's try that one. What the fuck? Bro. My stuff is just tripping right now. If y'all could see this, you'd be tripping out. Let me show you what it's doing. Maybe it'll show it. Maybe it won't. Y'all see what it was doing? Whoa. Okay, y'all see that, right? Let me change. It's like trying to download all the documents into one thing. Bro, I don't know what I did. For reals, I am closed window. That's what I like about y'all, that y'all sit here and y'all chill with me, even though I'm having a tough time at it at the moment. Let me delete these fuckers. Well, how's y'all's Wednesday going? I hope it's going well. I really do. Because my Wednesday is going pretty good. I'm still not in work mode yet. I'm still not all the way in work mode. But I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So let's see if it'll do it this time. Because when I did this morning, it might be that this is running an older version. Yeah, doing the same shit. Hold on a second. Let me just X out of this and change it back to what it was. If y'all could see what it's doing, you'd be like, what the hell, 12? What the hell? That's why I don't like freaking Explorer. Because it's wanting to do what it wants to do right now. It's literally just flashing. So let me ask you a question, because this is something that I do know about, that I did post earlier. I posted the one where they were talking about canvassing the location of 1122 King Road. Okay? So think about that a minute. That document that I put in my community tab today. Think a little bit about that. How many of you believe, because I've had some crazy ass comments on that. Somebody said that it didn't look like a vest, blah, blah, blah. Did it look like a coat? Tell me what y'all think about that. I'm having trouble right now, so if I'm not responding to y'all, that's why. It's like there's a virus or some shit. It won't even let me close the damn window. Like, it won't even, when you click on something like the browser, it won't even stay. It'll just sit there and flash. Okay, close the fucking thing. Okay, 12. Let's use your anger management skills. Not get mad. Just go back in there and change it back to what it was. At least you could read it. Now let me see if I can find it. Subway was good. It's good. I had Subway the other day. I had the chicken teriyaki. It wasn't all that great, but it was all right. I'm craving ice cream and swimming, actually, at the moment. I don't know why I want to. I definitely don't want to use that shit. I mean, the program that I was using ain't even on here anymore. Let's see if this works. No, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. Come on, Gage. Okay, now I got it back. Let's just go from this, because I am wasting y'all's time right now. I'm going to make it smaller, and I'm going to read it. And we'll go with this. I'm sorry if I can't show you on the screen. I didn't show you the other day. So we're going to go to number 7 tonight. This one, it says, if y'all been paying attention with other creators, y'all know what these talk about. So number 7 starts off, and it says, can y'all hear me okay? It says on 11/13/2022, at about 1200 hours, Captain Barrett called me and informed me there had been multiple victims of a homicide located in a residence at King Road and requested all available detectives. I called Detective Vargas and was informed she was out of town and would be back in Moscow on Monday morning. I called Detective Mowry and he informed me that he would be on his way shortly. I called ISP Lieutenant Mike Mooney and told him I needed assistance from ISP detectives in processing the crime scene. Lieutenant Mooney put me in contact with Sergeant Gilbertson. I briefed Sergeant Gilbertson on what I knew, and he told me he would start to assemble his team. I responded to the scene where I met with Sergeant Gunderson. Sergeant Gunderson informed me that officers were dispatched to the unconscious person at 1122 King Road residence, and that is when they found 4 deceased college-age people in the home. I told Sergeant Gunderson I needed someone from his team to return to the police department to start writing an affidavit for a search warrant. Sergeant Gunderson asked Officer Nunez to handle that task. So, I'm just having all kinds of problems, Rondi. I don't know what's up. Y'all might need to turn y'all's up on your end because I don't know. I don't have a clue. I mean, it seemed to be working high on the little thing that shows you. So once they got the notification to go to the home, they rounded up the detectives. And then they started writing the affidavit for a search warrant. And as we've talked about before in the past, and I'm only using this for educational value, not really using it to discuss what's written in these documents, unless I see or hear something that really blows my mind. It just that I want to use it as a teaching tool. So as we've been told, when you write a search warrant, you need to write probable cause. You need to have a document that has probable cause. And this, of course, would be the probable cause affidavit. So you're also going to want to match the search warrant to what it is that you're describing in the probable cause to give you the authority to go into any crime scene to look for certain things that is not openly out in the common areas. So whenever you're looking to write that affidavit, of course, it's a probable cause, right? So many people, when this affidavit was written, were discussing as it was just a story that was being written by these officers based on their understanding of the crime scene, which it is not. It was made for probable cause, meaning that without this probable cause affidavit, you can't ask for search warrants. You can't ask for certain things, that are needed in order to conduct your investigation. And so a lot of times, without that affidavit backing up these search warrants, you have nothing. You can't do it. You just can't go in there and say, well, I'm going to look for a knife. I'm going to look for clothing. I'm going to look for any of this stuff. Those search warrants need to match the probable cause affidavit. If they don't, then you have a problem. And as I've told you in the past, with those search warrants, they need to be very descriptive. They need to be very to the point of what you're asking for to be able to search in this residence. So, chat, what are some things that you believe would have been on these search warrants initially when they were writing this stuff up? What are some things that they might be searching for in the residence? Y'all help me out. Let's play detective. Because the probable cause stated, what would the probable cause be in your opinion? You've already read the PCA, so you know what their narrative was. What would your probable cause mean to apply for a search warrant? What would the probable cause entail in your mind based on these documents and based on what you know about the crime scene? I know you are talking about something else, but can somebody answer me? Because I feel like the delay is really long. If y'all don't want to do this, I'll take it down and we'll talk. I mean, we'll just talk and chat and hang out in here. I don't have to go over this. You know, it's not one of my favorite things at the moment. If you don't know, you don't know. You get what I'm saying? But if you don't learn, you're always going to fall for the next crime that comes along. There's a hot one on of the Devil's Den that I'm going to do tomorrow. So if you don't know what the probable cause really is, the affidavit, and you've only gone into what other people have told you it is, then you're never going to know the correct reasoning behind one. Okay, the question is, if you were going to write the probable cause based on walking into this residence, identifying what we did in the last 4, going through the residence, what they saw, and you were going to search for things such as evidence, what would be in those search warrants that you would be filling out to match the probable cause? Because they have to match up. You have a cause and you have an effect, and this is what you're looking for. So the cause was they were called for an unconscious person. Upon entering the residence, this is what was seen, what was heard, the interviews that were stated. Now, that's probable cause for you to write a search warrant to go into that residence and start looking for evidence. What are some specific things that you would be looking for in the initial phases of this investigation? No, not the search warrant for BK. We're at the residence of 1122. So look at it as these officers just arrived to the scene for this unconscious person. They interviewed these individuals. They interviewed Dylan. They interviewed Hunter. They interviewed Emily. They interviewed Bethany. Based on what they wrote in the probable cause affidavit. And then you start filing out search warrants. What would they be searching for in that residence in the initial searches of these search warrants? Because the initial search warrants would have been supplying them with the initiative to look into that home. Because you can't just go into somebody's home and start looking around without a search warrant. I mean, if you walk in and there's drugs on the table, there's a gun on the table, well, if this person's a felon, you got the capacity to put them into custody based on if it's their residence, if they're in the premises of this stuff. So we know that they got called out there for an unconscious person. Upon responding to this, they were told that there were unconscious people in the second floor bedroom. So this is how you would start the affidavit. Well, they arrived to the scene. This is initially what they heard. This is what people told them. So what would match that probable cause that you would be searching for? What would you specifically be asking for in that search warrant? Hey, PKC. Okay, there you go. Survivors' phones. Okay, let's be more specific, Leslie. Whose fingerprints would you be asking? I'm talking about kind of like what Firefly said, the survivors' phones. Would you be looking to see if possibly you could find a knife, a weapon, any clothing left behind? You get what I'm saying? Shoe prints, yeah. Fingerprints. These are things that you would be writing for, but you'd be writing for it more specifically because you can't just blanket ask for one thing all across the board. You have to be very specific. So the survivor's phone, that is a great one. Blood samples, that would be a good one too. Like, if there's specific blood on the walls or on the victims or something like that. DNA of all the people at the house. Yes. Phone records of the same people. Yes. Yes, Rhonda, you were right. I guess I didn't see your comment. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I have a little screen that I'm looking at and I didn't see it. My bad. So, like you're on that wavelength now. Now you're really thinking, because this is what the initial officers would have been doing, as it says right here. He asked them to start writing an affidavit for a search warrant. Sergeant Gunderson asked Officer Nunez to handle that task. So when he starts writing that probable cause affidavit, he is giving the description of what crime was committed at this residence and what was found in the initial canvas of the residence. Okay, you said weapons. I didn't see that. Where? I saw break-ins, video surveillance of the area. Yeah, that would have been initial. There it is, weapons. There you are. There you are, right there. My bad. My bad. Like I said, I'm working from a very little screen, but you are on point now. Now you understand what this is gonna do, because I'm kind of leading you through this process, because if you don't learn this correctly, then you're gonna be able to go with other people's narratives on their understanding of what a probable cause affidavit really is. Yes, you did. Y'all did wonderful. So let me continue reading. It says, I then did a very brief walkthrough of the residence. I entered the residence from the entrance on the north side of the building. Officer Warner, who was securing the area, logged my entrance into the residence. I then went up to the stairs and located a deceased female on the floor and male in the bed in the west bedroom on the second floor. I climbed the stairs to the third floor and located two deceased females in the southwest or southeast bedroom. They were both in the bed. I spoke with Officer Smith, who was securing the residence at the south entrance, for a moment. Then I exited the residence through the north entrance. Officer Warner noted my departure. So this is taking you step by step. Everything that he's visually seeing, hearing, observing, without the search warrant at this point, is applicable for them to put into probable cause. So why did you enter the second floor? Because there was a call of an unconscious person that was not waking up. So I entered looking to see if that unconscious person was indeed unconscious. Upon entering, this is what I saw. And this is what you see in the PCA, right? Is that not how Payne ultimately wrote it? And he wrote these not because he was the one that was the initial person on site. He was taking this information as what we're reading today, and they put it all together in the probable cause affidavit. As they told us one time, the probable cause was a working document, meaning that as things arose that they found out, then it went into the probable cause, and then the search warrants were written for those new evidentiary pieces that were popping up. So what we know is the arriving officers were not the detectives that were investigating the crime. Their only job is to secure the resident and to make sure that there is not a threat still to the people in that residence and to themselves, the officers. But they can call the detectives, and upon walking through the residence, they're able to turn their body cam on. They're able to turn their recorders on to later on hear what they've seen, what they've observed, which I think is a wonderful thing, because the detectives are going to ask, so when you got here, what did you see? Because by that point, there could have been things that deteriorated that could not be used for evidence any further based on the time frame. But it seems like they were following protocol. It said, I called Sergeant Gilbertson and informed him of the additional information provided to me and what I had seen. I told him his MPD would be needing their assistance. Also told Sergeant Gilbertson, MPD, who had an officer writing an affidavit for a search warrant. So I returned to the police department, where I met with Sergeant Blaker and Corporal Payne, whom I had called earlier and requested they respond to the PD. At this time, Detective Mowry was at the police department. I requested they interview the other occupants of the residence where the deceased were located. There were also several friends of the deceased who had been with the deceased the night before and may have had information of their whereabouts and who they were with prior to the murders. Those interviews started at about 13:48 hours. Those to be interviewed arrived at the PD about 13:30 hours. I put them in the training room and provided them with drinks and snacks. I've always been told in any line of work that I've ever done, whether it be counseling, whether it be just understanding about the criminal justice field that I'm currently going into, I've been told, write and document as if you're going to court. Because somebody is going to try to tear apart your documentation. And it has to read in a portion where you're walking somebody through this process. I don't see glitter. Where's glitter at? Hi, glitter, I don't see you. But I don't know. Can somebody check and see if she's been blocked or timed out? I don't see her. But you have to write these things as if you're going to court. As if you're going to have to one day retell what it was that happened at that crime scene. This is just one of multitudes of crime scenes where people do this every day. Every day. When a crime is committed, whether it be murder, whether it be shoplifting, whether it be criminal mischief, whatever, they have to write exactly what the same type as if what is written here. The time frame, what was observed, things like that. It says Captain Lanier arrived and asked me how he could help. I requested he find officers that were not already tasked and complete a canvass of the neighborhood. Somebody in chat said, make sure that you get the camera footage. That's very good. Captain Lanier took care of the neighborhood canvassing. So there's going to be... There she is. I see her now. So this is where the canvassing and the geofencing of the neighborhood started happening. This is where in another document they talk about the camera at 1118 King Road or 1118 King Road. So they've started the video canvassing, they've started the visual canvassing, and this is where in another document that I read, they found a black backpack. So, yeah, I see her now. I wasn't seeing her before. So it says at about 14-13 hours, blank, 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 Xana arrived at the PD. I don't know why he put Xana there. He was informed of Xana's death. Oh, the father of Xana, probably. That's probably what it says. The father of Xana arrived at the PD. He was informed of Xana's death by Captain Dollinger. Captain Barrett informed me Ethan Chapin's family had been notified of Ethan's death. Captain Barrett asked me to take care of the death notifications for Maddie Mogan and Kayla Gonsalves. Captain Barrett provided me with the information the university had on file for Mogan and Gonsalves. There was so much emergency contact information for either, so I called Kootenai County Dispatch due to Mogan and Gonsalves' home addresses being in Kootenai County. I provided blank the KCSO dispatcher the addresses listed with the university for Madison Mogan and Kayla Gonsalves. So as you can tell as I'm reading this, yeah, I see her now. I thought she was because I didn't see her when everybody was saying hello. So as you can see now, as this is being written, it's not a book. It's not a fictional entry. It's not something that the way it's written, it's not telling a story. It's basically, well, I take that back. It is telling a story to an extent, but it's not interjecting their emotional connection to what it is that they're writing. They're merely just stating the facts of what they saw and what they observed and what the people that they interviewed, how that went. So it says, blank told me she had the names blank and blank. So it's Stephen Christy Gonsalves listed as resident of the addresses provided for Kaylee Gonsalves. I requested a death notification for them. I was contacted by Deputy Mitch Jan from KCSO. He asked what he could tell the parents, and I informed him we knew very little at this time. A short time later, Deputy Jan called me and told me that when he arrived to give the notification, the parents were already aware. Also provided Madison Mogen's address, and blank was not able to locate anyone with the name Mogen at that residence. Blank said she would send a Coeur d'Alene officer by the residence to make contact. A short time later, Officer Matt Sykes requested I call him. When I made contact with Officer Sykes, he told me blank and blank of Madison Mogen were driving to Moscow. About 20 minutes after my conversation with Officer Sykes, it looks like the parents arrived at the PD because we heard per Maddie's mom that they did drive to Moscow and they ended up at the police department. So Barrett gave them the death notification. Sergeant Barrett requested I interview them. I spoke with blank and blank in the lobby interview room. They told me they had a great relationship with Madison. She got along with everyone. She had a strong relationship with her boyfriend Jake, who lived in Boise and had been dating for about 1.5 years, and Jake is from blank. I asked if there were any problems with past boyfriends, and there were none to their knowledge. I asked if Madison had mentioned any stalking behavior from anyone or anyone that might make her uncomfortable, and she said she had never spoke of anything. The rest of my shift was spent allocating resources where they were needed. So let me ask you, chat, as I was reading that, does that not sound like somebody just reciting information as they received it or as they saw it, step by step? I don't understand how people cannot see that this is not verbatim. This is not written in a way, kind of like you and I are speaking right now. You're not speaking to me, but I'm speaking to you. Kind of like we're speaking right now. I'm speaking to you in a way, trying to take you through this process in a way that you understand. I'm not writing it as the final draft. This isn't the final draft. This was the initial report that were written, the incident report that were written. And there's also other report that this stuff goes on to, not just a printed out piece of paper like this. There's incident report, there's all kinds of stuff where all this information, as they're interviewing people and getting certain things done, they're writing down times, dates, what's said, to later write a report. This wasn't copied and pasted. Kind of like the PCA, it seemed like it was copied and pasted and, handwritten stuff. I didn't like how they did that, but, it's the way they chose to do it. And thank you, Glitter, for that. Thank you. Wanted to make it like you guys are, in the chairs, or you're actually looking to me, looking from the audience at me as I'm presenting something. I hope the rest of you do like it as well, because it seemed to be one of my favorites. So is all this stuff that I'm talking about right now, is it making sense to you? Because, like I said, if you don't learn it, maybe you don't want to learn it. I mean, I'm kind of I'm kind of, I guess, assuming that you would want to learn the proper way that things go on, because this case is over pretty much. So when a new case comes along, kind of like with the Devil's Den, I'm going to prepare you right now. When they found those dead bodies, when those officers first on the scene, when they found those dead bodies at the bottom of the trail, all of a sudden that became a crime scene. All of a sudden, they started canvassing the area, curtailing it off, doing what these individuals did as well. What they saw, what they heard, who told them what, and the basis of what they know about the perpetrator. So that's why I'm going over this as an example, because it's easy to talk about because we all know the case. We know it in a way that has been described to us in different ways. But if people really described it this way, it would be boring to sit through a live and listen to this stuff for a lot of people. So they need to make it a little more entertaining. I get that. But it doesn't mean that you change the narrative of what's being written and interject your own opinion, because I'm not interjecting my opinion at all in anything I'm reading. If I'm clueless to something, I'm asking you guys the question, right? That's how it should be, I believe. But, not everybody believes as I do, and that's fair. This narrative says on 11/13/22, I received a phone call advising me there was a quadruple homicide at 1122 King Road. I arrived at the Moscow Police Department, put on my police-issued uniform, and relieved Officer Warner of the above address, who was currently holding scene security and maintaining a log of who came in and who left of the apartment at the front door, which is on the north side of the apartment. I was on the scene for about 2 hours until I was relieved by Officer Morris, who took over my duties. So do you see how cut and dry that is? This person arrived at the PD, put on his police-issued uniform, and relieved the officer who was at the front door, documenting who went in and out. And then he was relieved. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. But people want to focus on sentence structure. They want to focus on words that are not there or should be there, or dates or whatever. Like I said, the probable cause affidavit was a working document, meaning that as it was being written, there were search warrants attached to the evidence that they wanted to search for as the evidence, as the documentation of the probable cause for these search warrants was being written. So it's cause and effect. You have a crime, you have a search warrant. What gives you the probable cause to go into this crime scene? What did you find that makes you want to look for more evidence? That is what a search warrant is. Plain and simple. But there's a lot of individuals who have no clue what a probable cause really is. They think that it's just a narrative by Corporal Payne and Corporal Blaker, who were writing that as they arrived on the scene, which was not true. There was a lot of collaborative officers that got together to write that. Because as you're hearing me read this, a lot of this stuff made it into the PCA and a lot of it didn't. Does that mean that they were lying? No. Or did that mean that possibly this was not important enough to mention in that probable cause because it didn't have any supplementary search warrant evidence attached to it? So if something doesn't really need a search warrant, you can mention it in the incident report, but you're not necessarily going to write it in the probable cause because there's no probable cause to take that any further. You get what I'm saying? Like, if you go in and you see a table overturned, well, if there's no blood smear or anything on that table, it's not broken, it's not, wasn't used for the crime, it doesn't look like it was used for the crime, then you're not going to write a search warrant to be searching for fingerprints, blood samples, anything of that nature, because it's not relative. Yes, exactly. That's when this corruption bullshit comes in. You're right, because they're pointing at the of the individuals. What I've said in the very beginning, everybody has a role to play in this investigation. It's not Corporal Payne and Blaker were the only two investigating this whole thing. They weren't even really, probably, to be fair, they weren't even investigating it. They were in charge of making sure that the information that was coming in was relative. The probable cause matched the search warrants. And that was probably what their job was. And as the probable cause affidavit was being written, they were probably overlooking it. But that was it. That was it. The detectives, the FBI, the ISP, their investigators were in charge of the evidence collecting and everything else associated with this crime, not Blaker or Payne. So the fact that they get a lot of blame on it based on the PCA because their names are on it, and there are some inconsistencies in their PCAs, they were trying to catch a killer. Did the inconsistency make it right? No. But had that been brought into court, that's the checks and balances of the law enforcement. If this information brought into court, obviously the defense could have said, well, to bring up something that doesn't match up, you could say, hey, how come that your probable cause state this and his state that? What's up with the inconsistency? If she would have been cross-examining them. But since that never happened, we don't get that. And I hope that makes sense. Let me continue on. It says, yes, that's exactly right, Texas. Once the first officer finds the bodies, it's not his job at that point to look for blood, weapons, or anything else like that. His job is merely to secure the scene, make sure there's not a threat to the public, to themselves, or the killer's still not in the residence. That's what their initial job is. And to assist the first responders, the EMS, the paramedics, if they need help, to assist them. To keep family members out of the residence, to keep other people out of the residence, that's their job. They're not the investigators. They may have seen a lot more than other people saw because they were the first on the scene. And let's say, we do know that this was 12 hours later, right? Or 8 hours later, my bad. See, I'm starting to forget things. It was 8 hours later. So, it says, the following day on 11/14/22, I learned that a sheath was found inside the apartment. See, they keep calling it an apartment. It's a house. The semantics of wording just cracks me up when people choose to use an inconsistency such as the wording of calling it a house or an apartment. Does it really matter? It's a residence, right? The sheath was tan in color and had a Marine Corps eagle globe, an anchor symbol on the sheath. The word USMC were located under the KGA, and K-bar was above the KGA. So we know this part made it into the PCA because I remember reading this. I was tasked to follow up with the businesses in town to see if the particular knife was sold there. I followed up with Tri-State Outfitters, Big Five Sporting Goods, Moscow Building Supply, Spence Hardware, and Walmart. Each of the above stores does not sell a K-bar brand knife. So, they send them on this fact-finding mission to see which stores in town could have sold this knife. I don't know if they looked at pawn shops or not. I mean, maybe they didn't. I don't even know if you could buy a K-bar at a pawn shop. I've never looked. But can y'all get that part that he was sent on a fact-finding mission? So once he went to Walmart, I was speaking with the staff member, blank, listed on the name tag, who was showing me the knives on display. She told me about 2 or 3 weeks ago, a white college-age male asked for a black ski mask that would cover his face. Blank was unable to provide such detail other than he was taller than she was and maybe had tan skin and complexion. Blank said she advised the male they did not have any black ski mask and only camo. Blank said the male then walked away. And I've heard a lot of people talking about this right here. That could have been relevant, or that could have not been relevant. You don't have a follow-up to this information. He put it in there based on circumstance. Well, they're looking for any little thing in any of these stores that could provide relative to the crime. So as she was talking about this individual that walked in asking for a ski mask, that would be relative. Yeah, it could have been anybody. It could have been anybody. Doesn't necessarily mean it was Brian. But the relativeness to the crime made it enough for him to ask questions, further questions. He was interviewing her. That's why I'm saying there's a difference between an interview and an interrogation. This was an interview. Anytime they ask questions such as this, and the person telling them information of their own relevance, you know? Yeah, there was somebody in here. This is what he looked like. This is what he could have looked like. I know he was taller than me. And I know he would look like a college kid. But I told him that we didn't carry any black ones. We only had camo. And the person just walked away. Okay, I'll write that down just for future reference in case that becomes any kind of, if we do find somebody who bought a black ski mask, where did they buy it? What receipt did they have for it? Where was it purchased? Nothing more, nothing less. So it could have been anybody. That's why this didn't make it into the PCA. On 11/14/22, at about 11:45 hours, I spoke with blank at the Memorial Gym substation. Blank is currently the blank for the fraternity, I guess Sigma Chi, I don't know. I asked blank if he could walk me through what he did on the night of 11/12/22 and the early morning of 11/13/22. Blank said that about 18:30 on 11/12/22, he was at a party. He said the party was at the Tree House, which is an off-site campus house for the sorority blank. Blank did not know the specific address, but said the house is near the White Apartments. Blank said at the party he saw blank, who was with blank, boyfriend, unknown name maybe. Blank said blank was the only member of whatever that he recognized at the party. Blank said he left around 2200 or 2300 hours. Blank and blank and blank, those who he left with. Blank said he went to the corner club around 1:49 on 11/13/2022 to pick up blank and blank and blank and blank. Said they were alone and not with anyone. Blank said he dropped the 3 above individuals off at their apartment off of King Road. Blank said after he dropped them off, he went back home. So I don't know if this is the individual that is the rideshare driver. If it is, then he was giving relevance to his understanding of the time frame in question. They're merely just asking questions at this point. How are you going to get answers if you don't ask the questions? But by asking questions, you don't interject your own opinion. That's the difference in an investigation and a speculative, fictional narrative that people put out. When you're asking questions, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. But if you're interjecting your own shortcomings into these questions that you're asking, all you're doing is muddying up what's already been asked. You're making it to a point where what they've written has no value in your eyes because you don't see the part that should be there that probably weren't even there to begin with. They weren't even asked because it was irrelevant to the officer. Does that make sense to you guys in chat or not? Because that's what's gone on with this case, is people have interjected their own emotional attachment to it and asking these questions. They are questions, but at the same time, they're biased questions. They're being asked in a way where these questions are biased toward the outcome that they want to see, not based on what the outcome was or is. Because I can tell you, okay, well, why didn't he follow up on the guy with the ski mask? Why didn't he ask for a name? Why didn't he, do this and this and this? Because it wasn't relative at that point. Why didn't he continue to interview the rideshare driver and ask for more information? Why didn't he? Did he see this? Did he see that? Did he see? Because it wasn't an interrogation. It was an interview. When you're gathering information, and that's all that happens in the initial phases, is you're interviewing witnesses, you're interviewing friends of friends, you're interviewing people around the block, you're trying to get camera footage, you're trying to get photos, you're trying to get an understanding of this residence where this crime happened. And you're trying to not ask the same question that the officer or detective that just came on scene asked about 20 times. So this says, on 11/14/2022, at approximately 1100 hours, I responded to 1122 King Road in regard to a follow-up. So he's coming back. He's already interviewed the person, so now he's coming back. I took note of who came and went from the scene. ISP detectives as well as Sergeant Blaker, Detective Vargas, and prosecuting attorneys entered the residence. Blank Blank arrived shortly after with her cadaver dogs to attempt and locate a blood trail from the residence. So if you don't remember this is the part where Ann Taylor, Bill Thompson, I think this was just Bill Thompson when he was arriving at the residence with the people, when there was that photograph of him at the front door with those officers. And then we saw that lady with the German Shepherd on the side of the residence. I think that's what he's talking about here. And see, we've been given the luxury of having these photos that go along with exactly what he's writing. So how could that be a lie if what I'm reading right now, there's a photograph that matches what he's saying? I just don't understand. But it's not my job to understand other people's thinking. It really isn't. I'm not getting paid for it. It's not my job. ISP entered the residence at 11:25 hours. Detective Vargas entered at 11:26 hours and left at 12:26 hours. Sergeant Blaker entered at 11:27 hours, exited at 11:49 hours. Prosecuting attorney Ashley Jennings and William Thompson entered at 11:30 hours and left at 11:53. PA Jennings re-entered at 12 o'clock. Sergeant Blaker re-entered at 1200 hours with Detective Vargas. Blank arrived with her canine at 13:16 hours They all remained in the area until 1421. Everyone cleared the scene and the residence was secured again at 1421 hours. I stood on the scene for security until relieved. I cleared the residence at 1600 hours when Officer Brzezinski relieved me. So if you haven't figured this out, like I told you a while ago, you document as if you're going to court. So this individual documenting, all the individuals that document this interrogation, these interviews, they're documenting in the sense that they would be called into court. Because the way that the information is written, as I was reading it, would be the way the attorneys would try to confuse the individual on the stand. So you said you entered the residence at 1415 hours and left at 1515. Well, what went on between that? You failed to document that. Well, that's understandable. But if you read, as what I just read, the individual was merely just standing at the front door, checking people in and checking them out. That's all he did. So there's no relevance into put what he did every minute of every second. I hope this is really making sense because I'm trying to make it as simple as possible so that individuals can really see how this process works, not only with this crime, but with the other crimes that we're about to discuss later on. And honestly, I'm enjoying this because it's helping me remember the earliest part of the schooling that I had. I can tell you, when I did my earlier lives on this stuff, I had no clue what I was talking about. None whatsoever. And you might still think that I have no clue. But call me on it and I'll bring a page of a textbook and I will show you exactly where it states what I'm talking about. So I don't go live to discuss what other people say. I go live to discuss the knowledge that I've been given in books, by instructors, by professors, by people in the law enforcement capacity, in the investigative process, because we do affidavits. There has to be an affidavit for every crime that's committed, from the littlest to the biggest, because that's how crimes are investigated, with probable cause. Ours are usually about a paragraph or so, and that's it. But they could be longer based on how long the crime went on and all the information that was gathered. But if you think that the arriving officers were the investigators, you're wrong. If you think Blaker and Payne were the investigators, even though they were given the title, you're wrong. There were other people behind the scenes that were doing the grunt work. I'll have to look into that. Maybe we can talk about that in Discord tomorrow. And we'll actually dive into the information that they've given to kind of go along with this. So think about that, what I just said. If you believe that all the people early on that arrived for the unconscious person, all those people that saw what they saw, the arriving officers only gave their impression of what they saw upon arriving. And then the other two went through the house looking at the same type of walkthrough that the initial officers did. And at this point, the affidavit was already being written because you're wanting search warrants as quick as possible to get in there and start gathering stuff as evidence. Because the longer you wait, somebody could show up and ask for one of the phones. They could ask for anything. And if it's not on a search warrant or in your custody, you don't have any right to it. So I believe what I'm reading is pretty cut and dry. I'm not a bootlicker, as many people call these types of individuals who side with the police. You know, it's interesting, and it's very telling how methodical police work really is. They do have access to each other's notes, but most of the important stuff is being put in the affidavit for everybody to see. Or they're writing a generalized walking document where these individuals are putting these notes where whoever the investigators are reading these notes and picking out the good evidentiary portions to continue to add to the affidavit or the probable cause. So all these individuals that have said, you know, in the past, they've made negative remarks about the PCA. They made negative remarks about what was added, what shouldn't have been added, what was too much, what was too less, what was too vague. That's understandable. But it's not meant to give you what you want, which is the who, the what, and why. Very seldom you're going to get the what happened, what I saw, and what was said by interviewers. And as that's the very basic. And then there's going to be search warrants. And as you get evidence, then that's going to be put in there. And then, you know, the phone pings, and then all the DNA stuff, the blood, all the stuff that, you know, goes into an investigation. It's not going to make the probable cause. It's going to be the applicable portion of the investigation. This is building a case towards who you believe could or could not have done this crime. Building a profile of this individual. Yeah, you're probably right. They probably had someone wrote on them, but not written one. I mean, as we've heard Corporal Payne state on the stand in a hearing that he was meeting with other people as the PCA was a working document. So that tells you in itself that there was a lot of people with their hands in the PCA as it was being written, updating it, changing the wording, and not changing the wording to deceive, changing the wording to clarify, to make it as simple as possible. I haven't checked it yet, Leslie. I don't know when you sent it, but I haven't checked it yet. There's lots of cases that we never know every little detail or the why. That's so true. And you know, I would love to know the why in this case. I'm not going to lie to you. I would love to know what drove him to that point. But the more that I listen, the more that I actually hear things, I believe, because I saw something today. And that lady, I think her name was Eva. And I saw somebody talking about how she had discussed her apartment. Somebody came to her apartment like a week before, rattled her doorknob, tried to see if the door was locked, but her door was locked. The motive could have been as simple as what Ted Bundy did. They asked him, "How did you choose your victims?" He said he basically went into that sorority and saw which doors were unlocked. And that's when he chose that room. Simple as that. You know, cut and dry. Nothing substantial. But if you tell certain people that could have been the basis, very simple and to the point, that's not enough for them. It has to be dramatic, and there has to be, let's tear this down bit by bit and bit by bit until we have nothing left of the original statement. So it could have been the simple fact Brian saw the house was empty, went and checked the back slider. It was unlocked. He could have went to the front door at any point, opened it up, see if it was unlocked in the middle of the night. So at 3, 4 in the morning, you're watching this house. Everybody goes to sleep. You've made notes of when people come, when they go. He's doing some investigating of his own. He's doing some surveying of his own. So, okay, Saturday night, let me go check this door. Have all the lights are off. It's 4 o'clock or about. He walks into the backyard, goes into, check the slider. Guess what? It opens. It's not locked. You may check it a week later. It's open. It's not locked. He may check it. Of those 23 times, he could have checked it half of those times, and that would have given him the understanding, well, they don't lock this back door. And you know why I am talking about this? Because if you watch my video earlier on Haley Dunn, I spoke in that video about a situation when I was 13 years old and what I did, which was surveillance at its earliest roots. You know, I was surveying the residence of a girl that was in my class, who I later found out she was in my class, a classmate. Actually, she sat behind me in my math class, didn't even realize it. But I was surveying this residence at the time, gathering information of when that residence kind of died down. And I would use that time as to go peep. 13 years old. She didn't have any curtains on her windows. They had this little flap thing of the cooler where, you know, you could see in there. They would walk around the residence and just, you know, what normal young females walk around their house in. You know, at their house, they can walk around what they want to walk around in. They happen to walk around in panties and just a crop top. And to a 13-year-old, that's very enticing, especially to me at that point in life, was, man, I got to go see this every night. It's almost like a peep show. You know what I mean? So I got to thinking about Brian and how he possibly could have been doing the same thing. Not saying that he did, not saying that he didn't, but it's a good possibility. You know, Leslie, I'm sitting over here talking about a lot of stuff. If you want to share whatever it is that you are talking about in the chat, you don't have to ask me permission. Do it. You know what I mean? But I do want you to understand that if you don't learn different things about certain things about true crime, you're going to continue to fall for the false narratives that all these people push, and how they want to reel you in with every little detail, you know? And I'm not saying I'm the end all of knowledge. I'm just saying I'm just giving you knowledge as well as I know it. I'm about to conclude this live, and, you know, go ahead and share what you want to share. Go ahead. You don't have to have my permission, you know? I don't even know what you are talking about. I see that Ronnie was talking about Lake and Riley. Yeah, that was true. That story right there. It's true. She was his second choice. And I believe that this house was not the only choice on his route. And I said this in the earliest videos, and you can go back and watch them to verify whether I'm a liar or whether I'm just saying that now. Because there's a lot of people that have changed their narrative as the case has changed throughout time. But I said that. I believe that he canvassed that whole area. And he probably had a backup house. Like if Eva's was his number one or number two residence, you have to ask yourself, if you're going to pick a house, kind of like, I think I remember BTK saying this, maybe it was BTK. But he said, the houses on the corner at the dead end of the street are the perfect houses because you can go in and out and exit quickly without being seen. And if you look at this, 1122 was on the corner. I think her name's Eva. She was right across the street, and she supposedly had metal steps. It's fine. You can put it in there, Leslie. It's fine. I want to know too. I don't know where you would have seen it, but it's nice to know, I guess. He could eat slop for all I give a shit. Honestly, you know what I mean? His first meal could have been a turd sandwich. I would have been okay with that. But you know what I'm saying? As far as the house location plays a lot on what the police were talking about, it being a targeted attack. That house was targeted for a reason. The location, the in and out, the easy access to go in and out, and to be able to hide along the tree line. You get what I'm saying? Looking back on all these statements that were made early on, people say, well, that doesn't make sense, or that's not a, why were they trying to confuse us? Why weren't they telling us everything? Because when it comes to people that do this for a living, it's not their job to educate you. It's your job to educate yourself. And that's with anything. That's with anything. That's with anything. Goofy neighborhood. What are you talking about, Tom? I'm talking about the residents. About the residents being the location. Maddie, I believe, was the target. But as far as the residents, if there was no kind of locking mechanism on that slider, and I believe that possibly that could have been an easy target. You get what I'm saying? It's like, are you going to try to break in somewhere, or are you going to go in where it's easy to get into and easy to leave? You get what I'm saying? That's the target. You get what I'm saying? So as we look at it from hindsight and with these documents being read, it's easy to see how things really weren't done as nefariously as people concede them to be. You know what I'm saying? It possibly wasn't being done as nefarious as people want it to be. I don't believe one iota that they didn't make mistakes all the way around. I don't believe that they did not make a mistake. I believe there were a lot of mistakes done. But when a mistake has been done, You don't try to correct it by adding more to dilute the mistake that you make. You try to incorporate that mistake into making it more valuable to people to understand that that mistake was made, and this is how you're correcting that mistake based on your understanding at the time. So I believe a lot of that went on. You know what I'm saying? So it could or could not have been a perfect investigation. The prosecution probably wasn't perfect. The defense wasn't perfect. It's interesting to believe exactly all that's gone on that we don't know about. I mean, I hear all day long, not really so much, I'm embellishing that, but I hear a lot of people asking questions that they want answers to. And there's nothing wrong with asking questions. That's how you get clarity. But how many times do you ask the same question before you tell yourself, hey, that's the only answer that works? Or, hey, I may never get the answer that I'm looking for. Because that's going to keep this case going, is the individual giving that doubt. That doubt. As long as you're planting that seed of doubt and you're leading these people with just little breadcrumbs, and they keep asking that question, why did he do it? Where's the knife? Where's the clothing? What did he do with this? What did he do with that? A lot of these questions are not good variables. They're not those questions that you're necessarily going to get an answer for unless he decides to tell it. And I'm glad too, Rondi, that he's in jail. I really am. Last night's live probably wasn't popular for a lot of people, but it has to be said, It has to be said. A lot of these things are not as emotionally attaching as people put it to. I would be more attached to the two little girls that saw their parents murdered in front of their face on a hiking trail, where that would be the least viable place where a murder would take place. Not that it wouldn't happen, but for two little girls to watch their parents get murdered is a lot more sickening to me than this crime. And you might not like that, but these individuals, let them rest in peace, man. I'm only going over these documents because I'm trying to use it as an educational teaching tool to the best of my ability. Nothing more, nothing less. But I hope that you do find the answer that you're looking for, because the only way it's ever going to make sense is once you accept what it is that you're looking for. If you have your mind already made up and that bias is there, nothing anybody says or presents to you will ever make sense to you. Because you're always going to be asking that question. Why? And that question, why, never has a definitive answer. If we learned that he did this crime just because he wanted to do it, would that be enough for you? Or would it not? That's a good question, Tom. But you get my point there? If he just said, you know what, I don't have a real reason. I didn't really know them. They intrigued me. Their lifestyle intrigued me. It was a happening spot. I learned about this place through some of my students. I went to check it out, and I became obsessed with everything that went on in that home. And the night of the murders, I just decided I'd had enough. I've had enough of my life. I've had enough of what goes on between my ears. I've had enough with people in general, and I have enough with society. And the one person that I had seen the most, that intrigued me the most, I wanted to hurt her first. Because how should she be having such a great life while mine has always been a struggle? And then everybody else that came after her, they just added to the thrill of what I was doing. Nothing more, nothing less. Would that be enough for you? Would that be enough for you guys? If he said that, would that be enough for you? Be honest now. If that's how it went down, would that be enough for you? Or still would you want to know more details? Well, hopefully you let me know. Because I hate the time delay on this stream. I hate it. But what kind of details would you want, Tom? Would you want to see the autopsy photos? Would you want... What type of details would you really want? I believe that. And I told people that too at the very beginning. I said, you know, if you find out in the trial, I believed that there was going to be a trial at one point. If you find out in that trial that he merely, the only reason he did it is because he wanted to, would that be enough for you? And how he did it so fast. You know, I think I'm intrigued by some of how he didn't get supposedly as much evidence such as blood drops or any of that stuff, how he was able to contain all that. You get what I'm saying? I mean, I would want to know the variations, if there was any blood collected in the living room area, if he actually did try to clean up anything, what potentially he had in his arms as he was leaving. You know? Yeah, he used too many stabs, which is sloppy. You've said that before. You know, these are some of the things that you have to ask yourself is, at what point is knowing for curiosity and educational purposes leak into none of your business? You get what I'm saying? I don't know. I've ran over my time that I wanted to be on here. I hope that y'all have enjoyed this. I hope that y'all understand what the point I was trying to make by doing this. And I hope that you do understand that I'm looking at this now as a teaching moment rather than just going back to rehashing what happened, because he is in prison. He is in prison. He's not confessed, but he stated he was the one. So I believe that one down, another one to go. And I'll continue reading these documents because I think they're interesting. And I'll be going along with them as I'm using them as a teaching moment. And if that's boring to you, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, don't tune in. I don't know. But I understand why it would be intriguing to want to know certain things. If you haven't worked in that capacity, you would want to know. Kind of like last night when I showed about the prison in Bryan Enton. It's interesting how different Idaho is compared to Texas. Those are teaching moments. So, in that aspect, it's awesome to know that not every state is the same and certain things are different. And that's part of the whole mentality of whether you're in it to learn or whether you're in it to tell people where they're wrong. Because if you're teachable, you're eager to learn different things, even if you don't control it or understand it. But if you're wanting to just dictate your own thought pattern and be controlling, then you're closed-minded most of the time. Does that make sense? Well, I hope y'all have a beautiful night. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. And try to be safe as possible. Because it's a dirty world out there. And I'll be on tomorrow, hopefully talking about the Devil's Den case. I need to do some updating, obviously, based on what the chat said. And I hope y'all are doing well. I really do. Maestro, cue that music.